Hello all and welcome to another episode of the Kontakt Script Programmer. Today we're going to look at 4.9, which is a UI table. UI tables are incredibly useful for designing a cool user interface, and you'll see them a lot in sort of MIDI sequences, tuning tabs, chord recognizing things, scale patterns, all sorts of things like that. So we declare it pretty easily. We declare a UI table as an array with a number of columns with a width, a height, and a range. Okay, the width is the width of the table in grid units, the height in grid units, and the range is if it's above 0, it's a positive table. If it's a negative number, it's a bipolar table. So you might have 0 being sort of the center value, and then a positive and a negative below that. So we're going to declare it by, on initialization, we're declaring two different types of tables. So we're declaring a unipolar table, which is the positive table that I was talking about, and a bipolar table, which is a table with negative values. So we're declaring UI table as an array called table uni with 10 columns. Okay, so 10 slices, vertical slices. And then each of them is 2 wide, 2 high, and 100 values, or 100 range. Then on the other side, we're declaring a UI table that is a bipolar table, still with 10 columns, 2 to negative 100. Let's do this first, just so you understand what you're looking at, because if you don't understand what a table is, it might be a little bit confusing. So on initialization, we declare a UI table called, percentage sign, rather than a regular sign, because again, we're doing an array. Okay, so let's just look at this one first. So there we can see we've got 10 slots. We can draw in these slots, and in each of them we'll get what value we're on. You can see it goes from 0 to 100 in each of these, and you can drag across or up or down, do whatever you like if you like drawing. Next up, we're going to draw another UI table, but this is going to be our bipolar table. So I'm just going to call it BP, or it could be BI. It could be whatever you want. Really, it's your choice. And this one's going to be negative 100. And you're probably thinking, does that mean 0 is at the top and negative 100 is at the bottom? Not quite. 0 will be in the middle. You can see this middle line here, which means that when we go above the middle line, there is 100 values, and below the middle line, there are 100 values. Okay, so we can have a positive and a negative. So you can see how we're going to down to negative 100 from 0 in this table. So not necessarily always more useful, just sometimes more useful in terms of a sequencer or a pitch shifter, something like that, where you imagine you want to go up and down instead of just in one direction. However, you can do whatever you like. So those are the very, very first implementation. There is another exercise here that we're going to walk through. So what we're doing here is we're declaring a UI table called table with 128 columns, so it's quite massive. They are each 5 wide, 2 high, 100 units. So just because that looks a little bit different, I'm just going to declare that for us now. UI table called table with 128 columns, and it should be 5 wide, 2 high, 100, and on. You can see very, very, very fine slices. So maybe for sort of drawing waveforms or something like that, perhaps. So then we're declaring a UI value edit, which we will get to very soon if we haven't already got to it, where it's called steps. It goes from 1 to 127, one step at a time. And the very first steps is at 16. Okay. From there, we set the table steps shown to 16. So it's going to go up to 100 into integers of 16, essentially. Or rather, sorry, not that. It's going to change the amount of columns into blocks of 16. From there, we on the UI control of the steps, because it is a value editor, so we can type into it, we can pull it up and down, we can change the value. The set table steps shown will change for table by steps. Okay, so it's actually a pretty handy little function. So let's have a look. So we've declared the UI table. We declare a UI value edit called steps, which goes from 1 to 127, one step at a time. Steps are 16, and we set the table steps shown to table steps. Okay, so you can see, there we go, 16 steps. All right, now if we change this up or down, doesn't do squat. We can do this, but that's fine. From there, on the UI control of steps, whenever we touch steps, okay, this value here, this value editor, we change the table steps shown for table to steps and on. Okay, so as I crank this up, we can see it getting thinner and thinner up to a max of 127 because our UI value editor only goes up to 127. If we put this up to 1200, we go all the way up, although the it's only got 128 columns max, so I suppose we'd have to set that to 1000, which has to be less than 128. So there you go. Value tables, tables have to be up to 128, which makes sense because everything's always based off that bit. So as we increase it and decrease it, you can see the number of steps changing. So this is how we could get finer and finer resolution, perhaps as a drum sequencer or a pattern sequencer, something like that, by using a value editor or anything else to automate the set table steps shown for a UI table. So one of the really, really important functions in the table, unless you don't want to change the steps, in which case you obviously wouldn't need to use this or this. The native instruments control parameter index values. Let's see the documentation for those. Found a 5-page, but doesn't want to show me any of them. So table specific controls. The index, so native instruments control parameter index returns the index of the table that's triggered on the UI control callback. We can change the colors and the 0 lines for the tables. Nothing really that special there. We'll probably get into this more as just whenever we use tables or waveform generators, things like that. You can always change the set control parameter for control parameter bar color, and then use a hex value. So for now, we'll leave it there. Cool way to change up the UI so it's not all just buttons and knobs. You could do a volume control with sort of just 3 steps for your table. Could be a handy way to do it. You could do really anything with tables. They're pretty malleable, pretty interesting. For now, we'll leave it there, and I will see you next time.